The Galactic Council chamber aboard Prominence Station had seen its share of diplomatic incidents over the centuries. Wars had been averted here. Trade agreements worth quintillions of credits had been signed. Before we begin, YouTube shows me that 93% of you haven't subscribed yet. Subscribing is free, it really supports our community, and I'd love for you to be part of it. Also, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. Species had been welcomed into the fold of civilization with pomp and ceremony that would make a coronation look like a birthday party at a cheap restaurant. But this was new. Commander Abigail stood at the human delegation's platform, hands clasped behind her back, in a posture that screamed military discipline, and tried very, very hard not to laugh. It wasn't easy. The Centauri ambassador, a creature who looked like someone had taken a lion, made it walk upright, covered it in bronze scales, and given it a superiority complex the size of a gas giant, was in the middle of what could only be described as a tantrum. A very dignified tantrum, mind you. The Centauri didn't throw things or scream. That would be beneath them. No, Drelmach was delivering his outrage with the kind of controlled fury that came from a species whose entire culture revolved around honor, martial prowess, and never, ever showing weakness, which made the situation all the more hilarious. These cubs, Drelmach's voice rumbled through the chamber like distant thunder, his translator rendering his native growls into crisp galactic standard, are a menace. They are feral, undisciplined, violent beyond reason. Abigail kept her face carefully neutral. This was not her first rodeo. As the old Earth saying went, she'd been the human liaison to the Galactic Council for 3 cycles now, and in that time she'd dealt with trade disputes, territorial disagreements, and one memorable incident involving human tourists who'd accidentally started a religious movement on a backwater colony. She could handle one angry lion man, even if said lion man was currently describing human children like they were some kind of plague. "My son," Drelmach continued, his tail lashing behind him in a way that made the smaller species in the chamber lean back nervously, "was attacked, bitten, by a human juvenile during what was supposed to be a supervised cultural exchange at the Frontier Academy." The chamber erupted in murmurs. Various species chittered, clicked, hummed, and in one case changed colors rapidly, in what Abigail had learned was the Chromarian equivalent of gasping. Director Polnenthus, the Etheron administrator who ran the Frontier Academy and currently looked like a very stressed-out chandelier, chimed softly from their platform. The crystalline being's facets caught the light as they shifted nervously. "Ambassador Drelmach, perhaps we should examine the context of the—" Context? Drelmach's eyes, golden and slitted like a predator's, fixed on the director. "The context is that human cubs are permitted to roam freely among our youth, despite being clearly incapable of civilized interaction. This is not the first incident. In the past lunar cycle alone, there have been 8 separate complaints filed by 6 different species." Abigail's eyebrow twitched. 8 incidents, 6 species. And somehow, this was all being blamed on human children. Human children, who were routinely the smallest species at the Academy. Human children who lacked claws, fangs, natural armor, venom, telepathy, or any of the other fun biological advantages that evolution had handed out to pretty much every other sapient race in the galaxy. Human children who were just trying to get an education and maybe make some friends. But sure, they were the problem. "The Centauri Empire," Drelmach announced, drawing himself up to his full height, which was impressive enough to make even Abigail feel short, and she was tall for a human woman, formally demands that all human juveniles be removed from the Frontier Academy immediately. Furthermore, we demand reparations for the injury to my son and a full apology from the human government. The chamber fell silent. All eyes, optical sensors, and various other sensory organs turned to Abigail. She took a slow breath, held it, let it out. Then she smiled, and it was not a particularly nice smile. No. The single word dropped into the silence like a stone into still water. Drelmach's ears flattened against his skull. "Excuse me?" "I said no, Ambassador." Abigail's voice was pleasant, conversational even, which made it all the more dangerous. "The human coalition will not be removing our children from the Frontier Academy. We will not be paying reparations, and we certainly will not be apologizing." The murmurs started up again, louder this time. Abigail could see species whispering to each other, diplomatic aides frantically taking notes, and at least 3 different delegations signaling for emergency consultations with their home governments. Good. Let them talk. Furthermore, Abigail continued, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade, I move to launch a full investigation into these so-called incidents. Because from where I'm standing, Ambassador, it sounds like your son picked a fight and lost, and now you're here, in front of the entire Galactic Council, complaining that the kid he was bullying had the audacity to defend himself. The chamber exploded. Drelmach roared, an actual roar that made the translation software squeal in protest. "You dare accuse my son of— I dare accuse your son of being a bully." "Yes." Abigail's smile never wavered. "I dare accuse him of being twice the size of a human child and using that size to intimidate. I dare accuse him of starting something he couldn't finish. And I dare accuse you, Ambassador, of coming here to make a formal complaint because you're embarrassed that a species you consider weak put your pride and joy in his place." The Centauri ambassador's claws extended, scraping against the metal of his platform. For a moment, just a moment, Abigail wondered if she'd pushed too far. Centauri were proud. They were warriors, and they did not take insults lightly. But Drelmach was also a diplomat, and diplomats didn't survive long if they couldn't control themselves. "These are serious allegations, Commander," Director Polnenthus chimed, their crystalline voice tight with stress. "Do you have evidence to support—" "I have a traumatized 10-year-old human child who's been having nightmares for the past 6 nights, Abigail interrupted. "I have testimony from multiple human students about ongoing harassment, and I have a very strong suspicion that if we actually investigate what's been happening at your academy, Director, we're going to find out that human children aren't the aggressors here. They're the victims." She turned back to Drelmach, and her expression hardened. "You want to talk about your son's injury? Fine. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about how a human child, with no claws, no fangs, no natural weapons whatsoever, managed to hurt a Centauri youth. Let's talk about what circumstances would drive a human cub to bite. Because I promise you, Ambassador, human children don't just go around attacking people for fun. They are predators," Drelmach growled. "Everyone knows humans evolved as persistence hunters. Your kind chased prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. You are killers by nature." Abigail laughed. She couldn't help it. The sound echoed through the chamber, sharp and bright and utterly without humor. "You're absolutely right, Ambassador. We are predators. We did chase our prey to exhaustion. We climbed to the top of the food chain on a planet that was actively trying to kill us every single day." She leaned forward, her eyes locked on his. But you know what's funny? So are you. The Centauri are apex predators on your homeworld. You have claws, fangs, incredible strength, and reflexes that make human combat specialists look slow. She paused, letting that sink in. So why, Abigail said softly, is your son the one who got hurt? The question hung in the air like smoke. Drelmach said nothing. His tail had stopped lashing. His ears were still flat, but now there was something else in his expression, something that might have been uncertainty. I'm going to the Frontier Academy, Abigail announced, turning to address the entire council. I'm going to interview the children involved, I'm going to review the security footage, and I'm going to present my findings at the next council session. Until then, all formal complaints against human students are suspended pending investigation. You cannot simply, one of the other ambassadors began. Article 19 of the Galactic Education Charter, Abigail recited from memory. Any species accused of violating Academy conduct standards has the right to a full investigation before punitive measures are enacted. We're invoking that right. Unless someone wants to argue that human children don't deserve the same protections as everyone else's kids? Silence. Nobody wanted to be on record saying that. Excellent! Abigail gathered her datapad and turned to leave. I'll be in touch, Director Polnenthis. Please have all relevant records ready for my review. As she walked toward the exit, she could feel dozens of eyes following her. Let them watch. Let them whisper. She had work to do, because this wasn't the first time someone had underestimated humanity. It wasn't even the first time this cycle. The galaxy had a bad habit of looking at humans, seeing their lack of natural weapons, their relatively fragile bodies, their short lifespans, and assuming weakness. They always forgot that weakness and danger were not mutually exclusive. They always forgot that humans didn't need to be strong when they could be smart, fast, and absolutely relentless. And they definitely forgot that human children, those supposedly weak and defenseless cubs, were raised by a species that had survived ice ages, plagues, predators, and each other. Abigail smiled as the doors closed behind her. This was going to be interesting. The Frontier Academy was, objectively speaking, a marvel of engineering and interspecies cooperation. It floated in a stable orbit around a gas giant in neutral space, a massive ring-shaped structure that housed over 3,000 students from 82 different species. The architecture alone was a masterpiece, sections with varying gravity, atmosphere, and temperature to accommodate everyone from the methane-breathing Netharii to the high-pressure adapted Draconids. It was beautiful, expensive, and represented everything the Galactic Council wanted to believe about itself. United, enlightened, progressive, Abigail hated every centimeter of it. Not because of what it was, but because of what it pretended to be. The Academy claimed to be a place where young beings from across the galaxy could learn together, form bonds, and build a better future. Noble goals, admirable even. But scratch the surface, and you found the same old prejudices, the same hierarchies, the same territorial nonsense that plagued every civilization that had ever existed. She'd seen it in the way the hallways were designed, wider corridors near the sections housing larger species, narrower ones for the smaller races. She'd seen it in the cafeteria layouts, the recreational areas, even the classroom seating arrangements. Everything was optimized for the comfort of the big, the strong, the naturally dangerous. Everyone else had to adapt, including, apparently, the human children. Abigail strode through the main concourse, her boots clicking against the polished floor, and followed the directions to the human dormitory section. Around her, students moved in clusters, groups of Centauri youth prowling together, their scales gleaming under the artificial lights. Etheron children chiming melodiously as they floated past. A pack of draconids with their distinctive ridged crests comparing something on their data pads. Nobody paid her much attention. Adults were common enough in OEVD, the academy. Teachers, administrators, maintenance staff. Just another human, probably a parent here for a visit. Good. She wanted to see things as they really were, not as they'd be presented in some sanitized official tour. The human section was in what could politely be called the budget area of the station. The corridors were narrower here, the lighting slightly dimmer, and the whole place had that efficient, cramped feeling of space that had been allocated as an afterthought. Not terrible, not even particularly bad, but definitely not equal to the sprawling territories given to species like the Centauri or the Draconids. She found the common room easily enough. It was supposed to be a recreational area, but it looked more like a command center. Human children of various ages were scattered around the room, some studying, some playing games, some just talking. But there was something about the way they were positioned, the way they kept sight lines clear, the way older kids stayed near the younger ones. They weren't just hanging out. They were maintaining a defensive perimeter. "Can I help you?" A voice, male, somewhere in that awkward teenage range where it couldn't quite decide what octave it wanted to be. Abigail turned to find a boy, maybe 14 or 15, watching her with the kind of wary assessment she'd seen in soldiers. He was tall for his age, lean, with dark hair and eyes that were too old for his face. "I'm looking for Finn," she said. "I'm Commander Abigail, Human Coalition Diplomatic Corps." The boy's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. Recognition, maybe, or evaluation. "Callum," he said after a moment. "Most people call me Cal. Finn's well, not my brother, but close enough. I look out for him." "Where is he?" Cal jerked his head toward a corner where a smaller boy was curled up in a chair, nose buried in a datapad. "He's been like that since it happened. Reads all day, barely talks. The academy counselor said it's a coping mechanism." Abigail felt something cold settle in her chest. "How old is he?" 10. 10 years old, and already traumatized enough to need coping mechanisms. Fantastic. This just kept getting better. "Can I talk to him?" Cal studied her for another long moment, then nodded. "Yeah, but I'm staying. And if you upset him, we're done. I don't care what rank you are." Abigail liked him immediately. They crossed the room together, and Abigail noticed how the other human children tracked them. Not obviously, not in a way that would be noticed by someone who wasn't looking, but they were definitely watching, keeping tabs on the stranger in their space. These kids had learned situational awareness. That was either really good or really, really bad. "Finn," Cal said softly, "got someone here who wants to talk to you?" The boy looked up, and Abigail felt that cold thing in her chest turn to ice. He was small, even for a 10-year-old human. Skinny, with messy brown hair and glasses that kept sliding down his nose. He looked exactly like the kind of kid who'd get picked on in any school, anywhere in the galaxy. But his eyes had that same too-old quality as Cal's. "Hi, Finn," Abigail said, pulling up a chair. "My name's Abigail. I'm here to talk about what happened with Rakshan." Finn's whole body tensed. His knuckles went white around the datapad. "It's okay," Abigail said quickly. "You're not in trouble, I promise. I just want to understand what happened." "I bit him." Finn's voice was barely above a whisper. "Everyone knows I bit him. It's in all the reports." "Yeah, you did. But I want to know why." Finn looked at Cal, who nodded encouragingly. Because, Finn swallowed hard. Because he wouldn't stop. Wouldn't stop what? And then, slowly, haltingly, with Cal occasionally filling in details, the story came out. It had started small, the way these things always did. Rakshan and his friends, a group of 5 Centauri youth who thought they ran the academy, had decided that human children were fun to mess with. Nothing that would show up on official reports. Nothing that could be proven. Just casual intimidation, blocking hallways, accidentally knocking into smaller kids, making comments about how weak humans were, how easy it would be to hurt them. The academy staff had written it off as typical juvenile posturing, species establishing dominance hierarchies. Perfectly natural. Nothing to worry about. The fact that it was always the same species doing the posturing, always targeting the same victims, apparently wasn't worth noting. Then it had escalated. Rakshan had taken a particular interest in Finn, probably because Finn was small, quiet, and didn't fight back. Easy target. The Centauri youth had started cornering him, getting in his face, testing how far he could push before Finn broke. He said, Finn's voice cracked. He said humans were prey, that his ancestors used to hunt things like us, that we didn't belong here because we were too weak to defend ourselves. And the teachers? Abigail asked, though she already knew the answer. Cal snorted. Told Finn to ignore it. Said Rakshan was just testing boundaries, and Finn needed to stand up for himself. Which is great advice when you're half the size and the other guy has claws. Abigail closed her eyes, counted to 5, reminded herself that punching academy administrators was not appropriate diplomatic behavior. Tell me about the incident, she said. Finn's hands were shaking now. Cal moved closer, a protective presence, and Finn seemed to draw strength from it. It was during the supervised play session, Finn said. They pair us up for cultural exchange activities. I got paired with Rakshan. Of course he did, because the universe had a terrible sense of humor. We were supposed to be doing some kind of team-building exercise. But Rakshan, he wasn't interested in that. He kept pushing me, literally pushing me, saying I needed to push back, or I was proving his point about humans being weak. You told the supervisor? 3 times. Finn's voice was flat now, emotionless in the way that meant he was working very hard to keep control. They said we needed to work it out ourselves. That conflict resolution was part of the learning experience. Abigail was going to have words with that supervisor. Many words, loud words. So I tried to leave, Finn continued, just walk away. But Rakshan grabbed me, pulled me back, and then he pinned me down, put his weight on me. I couldn't breathe properly. He put his face right next to mine and said, "This is what prey feels like." The room had gone very quiet. Abigail realized that every human child in the common area was listening now, their own faces reflecting Finn's trauma. This hadn't just happened to Finn. This had happened to all of them, in one way or another. "And that's when you bit him," Abigail said softly. Finn nodded. "I didn't plan it. I couldn't get away. I couldn't push him off. He was too big and too heavy, and I couldn't breathe, and I panicked, and his arm was right there, and I bit down as hard as I could. And then he screamed. For the first time, something that might have been satisfaction flickered across Finn's face. He let go, and he screamed, and there was blood, and all the supervisors came running, and everyone was yelling, and they took me away, and I've been in my quarters ever since, except for meals and classes, and everyone looks at me like I'm some kind of monster." Abigail sat back, processing. Around her, she could feel the weight of all those young eyes, All those children waiting to see what the adult would do. "You're not a monster, Finn," she said firmly. "You defended yourself. That's not just okay. That's exactly what you should have done." "The Academy doesn't think so," Cal said bitterly. "They suspended him. Not Rakshan, not any of the other Senthari kids who've been pulling this garbage for months. Just Finn, for being violent." "Yeah, well, the Academy's wrong." Abigail stood up. "I need to see the security footage. And I need to talk to the other kids, all of you. Because I'm betting this isn't an isolated incident." "It's not." Cal's jaw was tight. "They pick on all of us. The Draconids, the Senthari, even some of the Natharii. They think we're weak because we don't have claws or scales or telepathy. They think we're easy targets." "Are you?" Abigail asked. It wasn't a challenge, just a question. Cal's smile was sharp and didn't reach his eyes. "No, Commander, we're really, really not. Show me." What followed was an education. Cal gathered a group of the older human children, and they took Abigail through their daily routines, showed her the routes they took through the station, always in groups, always with sight lines and exit strategies. Showed her the games they played in the rec rooms, games that looked innocent but were actually combat drills disguised as fun. Tag was persistence hunting practice. Dodgeball was projectile evasion and accuracy training. Even the card games had an element of tactical thinking, bluffing, reading opponents. "Who taught you this?" Abigail asked, watching a group of 8-year-olds play what looked like a simple game of capture the flag, but was actually a complex exercise in squad tactics. "We did," Cal said simply. "We had to. The older kids taught the younger kids, and we all practiced together. Because out there," he gestured toward the rest of the academy, "we're outnumbered and outgunned. So we had to get smart." "Nobody complained? No adults noticed?" Cal shrugged. "Why would they? We're just playing. Kids playing games. Nothing suspicious about that." Except everything was suspicious about it, Abigail thought. These children had essentially formed their own militia, complete with training regimens, tactical doctrine, and a clear chain of command. They'd done it quietly, without fuss, under the noses of every adult in the academy. And nobody had noticed because they'd looked at human children and seen weakness. They hadn't seen what Abigail was seeing now: preparation. "How many incidents have there been?" she asked. "Total. Not just the ones that were reported." Cal pulled out his data pad, pulled up a file. "We keep records. 32 physical confrontations in the last 3 months. 8 cases of theft. 15 instances of what we'd classify as assault, if the Academy recognized it as such. And probably 100 smaller things that we stopped tracking because there were too many." Abigail stared at the data. 32 confrontations. And in how many of those had the human children been blamed? All of them, judging by the official reports. "Send me that file," she said. "All of it. Every record you've got." "Are you going to help us?" Finn asked. He'd followed them, silent and watchful. "Really help us, not just tell us to try harder to fit in?" Abigail crouched down so she was at eye level with the boy. "Finn, I'm going to do better than help you. I'm going to make sure every species in the galaxy understands something very important." She smiled, and it was the same sharp, dangerous smile she'd given Drelmok in the council chamber. "I'm going to remind them that human children might not have claws or fangs, but we've got something better." "What's that?" Finn asked. "We've got teeth, and we're not afraid to use them." The emergency council session was packed. Word had spread fast, as it always did in diplomatic circles, and now Every species with even a tangential interest in the Frontier Academy situation had sent representatives. The chamber hummed with anticipation, curiosity, and, in some cases, barely concealed hostility. Abigail stood at the human platform, a data pad in one hand and a remote control in the other. Behind her, a massive holographic display flickered to life, ready to show whatever evidence she'd prepared. She looked calm, collected, professional. Inside, she was vibrating with the kind of cold fury that came from spending 3 days watching security footage of children being bullied and doing absolutely nothing about it except planning this moment. "Honorable delegates," she began, her voice carrying through the chamber with practiced ease. "Thank you for convening on such short notice. I promise this won't take long. I just need to show you a few things, and then we can all go back to pretending the galaxy is a civilized place." The sarcasm in that last sentence could have cut steel. Drelmach, seated in the Centauri delegation area with his son beside him, growled softly. "Commander, we are here as a courtesy. If you have evidence to present, present it. But these theatrics are—" "Oh, I have evidence, Ambassador." Abigail's smile was all teeth. "So much evidence. In fact, I have 6 hours of compiled footage showing exactly what's been happening at the Frontier Academy. But don't worry, I edited it down to the highlights. We'll be done in time for lunch." She clicked the remote, and the display came to life. The first clip showed a corridor in the academy. Timestamp in the corner marked it as 3 months prior. A group of human children, ranging from maybe 8 to 12 years old, were walking together when a cluster of Draconid youth blocked their path. The Draconids were bigger, naturally armored with thick scales and prominent ridges along their spines. "This," Abigail narrated, "is what the Academy staff likes to call typical social interaction. Watch what happens." The human children tried to go around. The Draconids moved to block them again. One of the Draconids said something, the translation appearing as subtitles. "Small, soft things. Easy to break." The human children backed up, changed direction, left without engaging. "Notice," Abigail said, "that the humans retreat. They avoid confrontation. This is not the behavior of aggressive, feral children. This is the behavior of prey animals avoiding predators." She clicked to the next clip. A different hallway, different day. Centauri youth this time, with Rakshan prominent among them. They surrounded a single human girl, maybe 9 years old, backing her against a wall. One of them reached out, claws extended, and scraped them along the wall next to her head. The girl stood perfectly still, eyes wide, until they got bored and left. "This incident," Abigail said, her voice tight, "was reported by the human student. The Academy's response was to counsel her on proper social integration and suggest she try harder to make friends." The murmurs in the chamber were starting now. Uncomfortable shifting. A few delegates leaning toward their aides for whispered consultations. Abigail wasn't done. She showed clip after clip. Human children being shoved, tripped, cornered. Their belongings stolen and thrown around like toys. Groups of larger species surrounding smaller humans. Testing, pushing, intimidating. And in every case, the human children either retreated or endured. 32 documented physical confrontations in 3 months, Abigail said. Not a single one initiated by a human child. Every single one started by other species. And you know what the really interesting part is? She paused, letting the tension build. In every single case, where a human child defended themselves, where they fought back, where they finally had enough and pushed or hit or, yes, bit their attacker. Those were the only incidents that resulted in disciplinary action. The chamber erupted, species shouting at each other, at Abigail, at the council administrators. Director Polnenthis was chiming frantically, trying to restore order. Abigail just stood there and waited. She had all day. Finally, Drelmach's roar cut through the chaos. "Enough!" The Centauri ambassador was standing now, his impressive size commanding attention. "Commander, you show us children being children. Yes, there is roughness. Yes, there is conflict. This is natural. The strong establish dominance. The weak learn their place. This is how societies function." "Is it?" Abigail's voice was dangerously soft. "That's an interesting philosophy, Ambassador. Let me show you where that philosophy leads." The next clip made the chamber go silent. It was the footage from the supervised play session. Finn and Rakshan paired together despite Finn's obvious discomfort. The camera angle was perfect. It caught everything. Rakshan pushing Finn, Finn trying to disengage. The supervisor, a Nethari adult, watching but not intervening. Finn asking for help, being told to handle it himself. Rakshan getting more aggressive, more physical. Finn attempting to leave. Rakshan grabbing him, pulling him back. And then the pin. Rakshan using his superior size and strength to force Finn to the ground, holding him there, leaning in close. The audio picked up Rakshan's words clearly. "This is what prey feels like." Abigail let the footage play. Let everyone in the chamber see a 10-year-old human child struggling to breathe, panic clear on his face, desperately trying to escape. Let them see the moment Finn's survival instincts overrode everything else. Let them see the bite. And then, most importantly, let them see Rakshan's reaction, the screaming, the shock, the complete and total unpreparedness for pain. "Your son," Abigail said, turning to face Drelmach directly, "is twice Finn's size. He has claws that can rend metal, fangs that can crush bone, natural armor that can deflect most small arms fire. He is, by any objective measure, a superior physical specimen." She paused. "So why did he lose to a 10-year-old human with no natural weapons?" The question hung in the air like a blade. "Because," Abigail continued, not waiting for an answer, "your son had never experienced real pain before. He'd never been in a real fight. He'd been playing at being a warrior, using his natural advantages to bully smaller beings, and he thought that made him strong." She turned back to address the entire chamber. "Every species here looks at human children and sees weakness. No claws, no fangs, no armor, no venom, soft skin, fragile bones, easy targets." Her voice rose. "But you're all making the same mistake. You're confusing lack of natural weapons with lack of danger." Another click. The display changed, showing footage of human children at play. But Abigail had carefully selected and annotated the clips. "This is a game called tag," she said, showing children chasing each other. "Humans invented it to teach persistence hunting. The goal is to chase your target until you catch them, no matter how long it takes." Next clip. "Dodgeball, projectile warfare training. Teaches evasion, accuracy, and team coordination." Next clip. "Wrestling, ground fighting techniques disguised as play." Next clip. "King of the Hill, territorial combat and defense." She showed game after game, each one innocent on the surface, each one a training exercise underneath. "Human children," Abigail said, "are not raised in safety and comfort. They're not protected from every potential harm. They're not kept separate from danger until they're fully grown. Human children are raised on a death world, by a species that climbed to the top of a food chain that included things that could kill us with a single bite. She pulled up images of Earth fauna: bears, lions, sharks, crocodiles, snakes, spiders. These are some of the predators we evolved alongside. We didn't have claws to fight them. We didn't have armor to protect us. We didn't have venom to kill them from a distance. What we had was endurance, intelligence, and the sheer bloody-minded refusal to give up. Another image, this one showing human children playing roughly, tumbling and wrestling and play-fighting. Human children roughhouse constantly. They test each other, challenge each other, hurt each other in controlled ways. They learn pain tolerance. They learn that getting knocked down isn't the end. It's just part of the game. They learn to keep going when every instinct says stop. She looked at Drelmach again. Your son has probably never been seriously hurt in his life. Every Centauri child is bigger, stronger, tougher than most other species adults. They don't need to learn pain tolerance because nothing can really hurt them. Not until they meet something that fights dirty, something that uses weapons they don't expect, something that bites. The Centauri ambassador said nothing. His ears were flat, his tail still. But he was listening. "And here's the thing that really terrifies you," Abigail said softly. "Finn wasn't even trying to hurt Rakshan. Not really. If he'd wanted to cause serious damage, if he'd gone for the throat or the eyes or any of the actual vulnerable spots, we'd be having a very different conversation." She let that sink in. Human children aren't dangerous because they're aggressive or violent or feral. They're dangerous because they're human. Because they're the cubs of a species that survived everything a hostile universe could throw at them by being adaptable, relentless, and absolutely unwilling to accept the role of prey. The display changed again, showing a comparison chart. The Academy has 82 species enrolled. 79 of them evolved as either apex predators, herd animals with significant natural defenses, or species that developed in relatively safe ecological niches. Humans are one of only 3 species that evolved as both prey and predator, that had to learn to survive against things bigger, faster, and stronger. She pointed to the chart. The Nethari evolved in crystal caves with no natural predators. The Aetheron coalesced in energy-rich nebulae where the concept of predation doesn't even apply. The Draconids were apex predators within 3 generations of developing sapience. The Centauri have been the dominant species on their world for their entire evolutionary history. She turned back to the chamber. You've all forgotten what it means to be prey. You've forgotten what it takes to survive when you're not the biggest, not the strongest, not the most dangerous thing in your environment. Human children haven't forgotten. They can't afford to forget. Because on Earth, forgetting means dying. Director Polnenthis chimed hesitantly. "Commander, are you suggesting that human children are inherently more violent than—" "No," Abigail interrupted. "I'm suggesting they're inherently more prepared. There's a difference. Violence is attacking without cause. Preparedness is being ready to defend yourself when attacked. Every incident, every single one, started with a human child being threatened or assaulted. The difference is that when human children fight back, they win. Because they're trained," Drelmach said slowly. "You train them. From childhood." "We teach them," Abigail corrected. "We teach them that the world can be dangerous. We teach them how to assess threats. We teach them how to defend themselves. And yes, we teach them how to fight. Because a human child who doesn't know how to fight is a human child who dies." She crossed her arms. "The real question, Ambassador, isn't why human children are so dangerous. The real question is why you think your children are safe. You've given them size and strength and natural weapons, and you've taught them that might makes right. You've taught them to be bullies. And then you're shocked, when they pick on someone who actually knows how to fight and get hurt. The silence in the chamber was absolute. You said our cubs bite, Abigail said, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. And you were absolutely right. Our cubs bite. They kick. They scratch. They gouge. They use every advantage they can find because they have to. Because unlike your children, Ambassador, human children understand that fights aren't about honor or dominance or proving who's stronger. Fights are about survival. And humans are very, very good at surviving. She stepped back from the podium. The human coalition will not be removing its children from the Frontier Academy. We will not be paying reparations, and we will not be apologizing. What we will be doing is filing formal complaints against 32 students from 8 different species for assault, harassment, and bullying. We'll also be filing a complaint against the Academy administration for negligence and failure to protect students under their care. Director Polnenthes's chiming rose to a nearly frantic pitch. Commander, surely we can resolve this through— No, Abigail said flatly. We're done resolving things quietly. We're done telling our children to just endure it. We're done being treated like the problem when we're actually the victims. This ends now. She looked at Drelmach one last time. Your son picked a fight and lost, Ambassador. But here's the thing. Finn held back. All of our children have been holding back because they're good kids who don't want to hurt anyone. But if the Academy, if this council, if the galaxy keeps pushing, keeps testing, keeps treating human children like prey, she smiled, cold and sharp. Eventually, they're going to stop holding back. And I really don't think you want to see what human children can do when they're not playing nice anymore. The demonstration arena was smaller than Abigail expected, but then again, it didn't need to be large. This wasn't about spectacle. This was about proving a point. The entire council was present, crowded into the observation deck, overlooking the padded floor below. Medical teams stood ready. Referees from 3 different species waited at the sidelines, ready to intervene if things went too far. Nobody really expected they'd need to. This is absurd, Drelmach muttered, but he was already moving toward the arena entrance. Rakshon followed, his bronze scales gleaming under the lights. The Centauri youth looked confident, eager even. He'd been training since he could walk. Combat was in his blood. Beside him, 3 other young aliens gathered. A draconid with impressive ridge crests, an Etherii whose crystalline form refracted light in dizzying patterns, and a hulking Brenthic whose rocky hide could deflect most impacts. All of them had filed complaints. All of them had volunteered to prove their superiority. On the human side, 4 children descended into the arena. Finn, still small and bookish-looking, Callum, tall and lean, and 2 others, a girl named Natasha, maybe 12, and a younger boy called Eric, who couldn't have been more than 9. They looked tiny compared to their opponents. Rules are simple, Abigail announced from the observation deck. Non-lethal contact only. Stop when your opponent yields. Medical teams intervene if necessary. Winner is whoever's still standing. Drelmach snorted. This will be over in moments. Yeah, Abigail agreed. It will. The referee's signal echoed through the arena. What happened next would be analyzed, debated, and taught in tactical courses for the next decade. The alien youth charged as a group, confident in their overwhelming physical advantages. Rakshan went straight for Finn, personal grudge overriding tactics. The human children scattered, not panicked, not random. They moved like water, like smoke, each child flowing to a predetermined position. Within seconds, they'd spread the alien youth out, isolated them, turned a 4-on-4 fight into 4 separate one-on-one engagements. Rakshan reached Finn first, claws extended, expecting an easy victory. Finn ducked under the swing, stepped inside Rakshan's guard, and drove his elbow into the Centauri youth's solar plexus with surgical precision. Rakshan gasped, doubling over. He'd never felt that kind of impact before. Finn didn't stop. He grabbed Rakshan's arm, used the larger youth's momentum against him, and took him to the ground. 3 seconds later, Finn had Rakshan in a joint lock that made the Centauri youth scream. "Yield," Finn said quietly. Rakshan yielded. Across the arena, similar scenes played out. Callum had the Draconid in a chokehold. Natasha had somehow gotten the Netheree on its back, one knee on its crystalline torso. Eric, the smallest human, had tripped the massive Brenthic and was systematically attacking nerve clusters with strikes that looked gentle but left the alien gasping. 90 seconds from start to finish. The arena went silent. Then Drelmok started laughing, deep rumbling laughter that echoed through the chamber. He stood, moved to the arena entrance, and helped his son to his feet. "I was wrong," the Centauri ambassador announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Commander Abigail, I owe you and your people an apology. These are not feral cubs. These are warriors in training." He bowed, actually bowed, toward the human children. "The Centauri Empire formally withdraws all complaints. Furthermore, we request human combat instructors for our own youth. We have been teaching them to rely on natural advantages. You teach your cubs to overcome disadvantages. That is true strength." One by one, the other delegations followed. Apologies. Withdrawals. Requests for cultural exchange programs. Abigail watched it all with satisfaction, then noticed Finn and Rakshan sitting together at the arena's edge. The Centauri youth was rubbing his arm where Finn had locked it, but he was talking, actually talking to the human boy. Finn was listening, nodding, and something that might have been a smile crossed his face. Maybe, just maybe, this would actually work. Later, back in her quarters, Abigail was drafting her final report when her comm chimed. Priority message from the Academy. She opened it, read the first line, and groaned. Incident report. Human adolescents have organized an unsanctioned combat club. 16 participants from 9 species. Please, advise. Abigail stared at the message for a long moment, then started laughing. She couldn't help it. The galaxy wasn't ready for human children. But at least now, maybe, they'd stop underestimating them. She composed her response. Let them play. Just make sure medical is on standby. After all, human cubs didn't just bite. They taught others to bite back. And sometimes, that was exactly what the galaxy needed.